Minister Dreeshen, you've spoken today about the economic impacts of the Port of Vancouver strike, and you've been very vocal in calling for increased government interventions to mitigate those impacts. How do the impacts of the Vancouver port strike compare to the economic impacts of the illegal closures of the Coots border crossing and the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor? Do you also believe the federal government has a role to play in ending those illegal blockades and occupations, or do you only prefer federal intervention when it comes to labor? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Just an earlier comment about how the Port of Vancouver and the West Coast Canadian ports don't have to compete with anyone. I would just like to remind all the members that of the Container Port Performance Index, a global ranking of container ports across the world, Vancouver ranks 347th, second last on the index. So we do compete as a country to make sure that we can ship our products around the world. So I just wanted to put that into context. And again, other testimony saying that shippers, deciding to permanently move away from Canadian ports, that results in not investing in Canadian companies.
Could you answer my question, though, Mr. Minister, please?
And if yeah, sure.
Point of order.
Thank you.
Point of order.
The member asked the question, and the witness can take the time to answer.
That's right.
To answer in whichever way, but the members have a very limited time, Minister, as you know, in your work that you do. So if you could answer the member, it would be appreciated.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to quickly finish that thought, if every shipper moved away from Canadian ports, there would be no jobs at Canadian ports. So just to put that in context. But to the member's specific question about any type of disruption, whether it be rail, our border with the U.S. at ports, we take it very seriously as a provincial government. Those are federal jurisdictions, and that is why we've been calling on the federal government to bring in some changes to Canada's labor code, so that the federal government, because these are federal jurisdictions, and we in Alberta, we stay in our lane when it comes to jurisdiction. I know Bill C-69, the Supreme Court ruled that the federal government was unconstitutional in allowing a federal impact assessment into provincial jurisdiction. Even just as a transportation minister, to build a provincial road would have had to have fallen under the federal impact assessment, but thankfully the Supreme Court ruled that that was unconstitutional. So staying in our lane, that is why we've been calling on the federal government to make sure, whether it be border crossings, issues with rail or with critical infrastructure at ports, that the federal government treats it seriously. And again, to the point of Montreal Port, there was one day the same federal government put back to work legislation, and that's something that we called for that same urgency to be used on the West Coast port strike this last summer.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much to all our witnesses.